Well, I'm super excited to be here. I'm always been someone who was a huge fan of Poland. I've lined up all of my activities from my vodka tasting to my communist history tours, and I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about how to take things to the next level, to think about how to push your creativity, to spot those new trends, and to realize your full potential. So the warning I'm going to give you is that the things I'm going to talk about today are not the ideas that help you get just a little bit better. I think you'll keep getting better on your own anyway. I'm going to talk about the things that make you uncomfortable, the ways to push yourself even further to try to get to the next level. To get you there, one of the first things I want to start with is a quote by a guy named Peter Drucker. He's considered the father of modern-day strategy. And he used to say, it's not the questions that change, it's the answers that do. So I'm going to ask you one question today, but we're going to keep coming back to it several times. And it's going to seem like a basic question, but by the end of the day, you're going to start thinking about your answer a bit differently. My question is specifically, what is it that you're trying to do? It seems pretty basic, but your answer to this changes the mission that your team is on. It changes your perspective of what you think you're capable of. So let's start diving into how some people answer this question. I'll give you an example first from Harley Davidson. When someone asked Harley what it is they did, one of the senior managers said, what we do is sell the ability for a 43-year-old accountant to ride through small towns and have people be afraid of him. It's not the Harley, it's the experience. Steve Jobs used to say, we make the buttons on the screen look so good that you'll want to lick them. And at Red Bull, they don't think of themselves as having a target demographic. They don't think that they're going after 16 to 24-year-old males. They actually, in their creative brief, say the target's not a demographic, it's a state of mind. So what are the ways that your mission changes? Well, one of the things that's become the biggest evolution in how business worked 30 years ago versus how it works now is that no matter what industry you're in, you're no longer selling a product. What you sell is an experience. And when we get too focused on trying to make the best product, we lose sight of how the consumer actually thinks. So I'm going to show you an example of the same product the way it used to be advertised in America in the 1950s. And I'm Canadian, by the way, so we can all make American jokes all day, just so I'm clear. I'm going to show you how the same product used to be advertised 50 years ago and how it's advertised today. Let's rewind back in time.
Here's a fellow who looks and feels like the top of the morning. That's because he's starting his day the Old Spice way. Old Spice Aftershave Lotion. The happiest ending a shave ever had. And it's good for your skin. Makes your face wake up. Tingles it to a clean, fresh feeling. Fresh as the spray of the surf. And you'll really like that good, tangy Old Spice scent. Bright and bracing as an ocean breeze. Now, what does all this luxury cost? Just $1. And never did a dollar bring you so much. So add spice to your life. Get Old Spice Aftershave Lotion by Schulten. Just one of many famous Old Spice grooming aids for men. That's Old Spice Aftershave Lotion from the laboratories of Schulten.
How much does it cost? And what laboratory makes it? Now, you can see the old commercials. It's like, it's $1, it's $1, it's $1. But they speak about every little point as if it's a bullet point they need to get across. That's actually human nature. When someone asks you, what is it that you do? Or when they ask somebody on your team, what is it that you do? In general, we say, well, I do this profession for this company. Or we think about everything in such a tactical way. But if you want to convince people, if you want to find trends and opportunity and think of ideas, you need to break out and think not about all the bullet points, but the experience. In advertising, let's take a look at how communication has evolved.
Hello, ladies. How are you? Fantastic. Does your man look like me? No. Can he smell like me? Yes. Should he use Old Spice body wash? I don't know. Do you like the smell of adventure? Do you want a man who smells like he can bake you a gourmet cake in the dream kitchen he built for you with his own hands? Of course you do. Swan dive. into the best night of your life. So, ladies, should your man smell like an Old Spice man? You tell me.
I could tell where the ladies are in the audience. There's like giggling happening throughout that, especially in that front row. The world's changed and it never returns to normal. So what can you learn from periods of chaos and change? Well, take a look at this list of companies. Disney, CNN, MTV, Burger King, FedEx, Apple, Fortune Magazine, GE, Hewlett-Packard. The reason why that list is so impressive is that every one of those companies was started during a period of global economic recession. Yes, Europe is in a period of uncertainty right now. It's a difficult period. But here's what happens. During these time periods of change, the consumer mindset evolves. People start wanting new things. But at the same time, companies, we get conservative. We try to protect what we already have. We try not to change. So someone who can think entrepreneurially, who can take risks, can come in, see how the consumer mind has changed, and start an epic company. To give you an example from that list, Fortune Magazine was started in 1929, just 3 months after the Wall Street crash that caused the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, Fortune cost $1, and $1 back then was enough to buy a wool sweater. It was 20 times more expensive than the New York Times newspaper. But despite that, during the Great Depression, they grew their subscriber base to 500,000 people. They made $7 million in modern-day profit as a luxury publication during the Great Depression. It seems counterintuitive. How did they possibly do that? But if you put yourself in that time period, America had gone from being an industrial nation to being actually, for the first time, corporate. And these were the first times that corporate decisions made behind boardroom doors in New York City were actually causing people to lose their jobs. So put differently, Fortune Magazine was a glimpse behind those boardroom doors to answer the question of how did we get in this position? When might we emerge? When might things change? So it didn't matter if it was expensive. It was an answer to a new consumer need. So what then are the consumer needs? What's changing? You know, technically, if change creates opportunity, it's pretty clear that we're living in the period with the greatest opportunity. You know, it's all sorts of things are happening. Social media, outsourcing, the rise of China, the Eurozone crisis. There's so much change that the consumer mindset has never been evolving as quickly as it does today. Yes, that's an opportunity, but there's also a catch. Blockbuster Video had about 5,000 to 10,000 locations in the USA and Canada. It was the first company to really make a brand out of at-home video rental. It was a multi-billion-dollar company. They had 3 chances to buy Netflix, but they didn't. Kodak. I'm actually interviewing this guy next week, Steve Sasson. He invented the digital camera in 1975, but where's Kodak now? It's bankrupt. In the early 1990s, in 1992, Kodak launched a website where you could post all of your pictures with your faces on them to share them with your friends and family. It's kind of like Facebook, 10 years ahead of its time. But they closed it. They decided to focus on what they're really good at. Encyclopedia Britannica, they were approached by Bill Gates, and he wanted to take their leather-bound encyclopedia and he wanted to make a digital encyclopedia to put on a CD-ROM. But at the time, they claimed to have the sum of human knowledge in just 28,000 pages. And they used to sell their leather-bound encyclopedia for $2,000. So they couldn't imagine taking that and putting it on a CD-ROM. That seemed like it would ruin everything. So they didn't want to do it. So finally, Bill Gates had to go and he had to buy a really sort of lower-level encyclopedia called Funk and Wagnalls. He turned it into Microsoft Encarta. It became the most commercially successful encyclopedia of all time. And they used it as a device to get people to buy a home computer, to convert people from thinking of computers as video game machines to places where you can educate your family. But even Bill Gates, as smart as he might be, he didn't take Encarta and he didn't make it something online. He didn't make it free. So Wikipedia came along, and Wikipedia is now the 6th most trafficked website in the world. The reason why in all of these cases is that when you're already good at something, you're successful, and that makes us complacent. And everyone in this room, including myself, we're here because we're good at what we do, so we're already experiencing this complacency. So I like to say, and what I'm working on in my next book, is the idea that the reason why we just optimize is that after 10,000 years of evolution as farmers, we're genetically engineered to hunt a field, but once we find our field of opportunity, we repeat and optimize the same decisions every single year, the same decisions that led to last year's harvest. But if you look at where we are today, it's history's highest rate of change. We can't just farm what worked before. We need to hunt. We need to find new opportunity. So that leads us to this hunt for trends and ideas. My first lesson on this is that when you're looking for a trend or idea, don't just look at what your competitors are doing, and don't look at what's already popular, because popular and cool are two very different things. Popular is mainstream. It's what's already happened. Cool is something unique. It's something cutting edge and viral. It's that next big thing that people want to talk about. But the problem is when you hunt for something inspiring, it becomes a little bit distracting. You'll find things like terror apparel. It's a fun way to freak out your neighbors, but maybe tougher to use in your company. I don't know. Awkward family photos. That's child abuse, that haircut. That's what that is. Feathered eyelashes. Customized beer labels. That's the Canadian in me. I think that we can bond the Polish and Canadians over beer. Baby toupees. It's embarrassing to be born without hair. Braille tattoos, co-ed matching haircuts, angry baby blogs, and the medical condition known as PAD. Yeah. Stands for post-avatar depression disorder. We all have it, but some people deal with it differently. Now, these are just crazy examples, but let's bring this back to your world and your businesses. Innovation and ideas surround us. It's not tough for you to get inspired, but the problem is you go back to your desk and you start looking at everything you got to do, and there's your customers, there's your competitors, there's your strategy. The act of getting inspired and finding ideas has become overwhelming. So what happens is that we rely on our gut instinct and we do the decisions that happened before instead of looking for something new. So part of the lesson today is about being methodical about adaptation, methodically looking for your new ideas. Now I'm going to give you a little background on me, and then we're going to dive into some more cool lessons. But all I ever wanted to do was be an entrepreneur. I wanted to find ideas and do something with them, but I could never find my business idea. So I spent about 10 years' time working as a consultant, and then I grew a billion-dollar business for a bank in North America. And all this sounded good, but it wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted my idea, and I couldn't find it. So I made a website where people from around the world could come to share their business ideas. And I thought maybe my next innovation or creative inspiration could come from Poland or South America or Japan. I didn't really know. But pretty soon there were a lot of people contributing, and over time we built a huge database of ideas, and so far we've had about 1.5 billion page views of people coming through. For us, the unique thing is that I never had to pick then. I thought I was going to get my business idea from someone sending in an idea, and now I never had to pick anything. Because instead what we do is we measure all of the different ideas looking for patterns and trends of opportunity, and then we work with a lot of different brands to help them reinvent. I'm going to walk you through some of what I've learned from working with so many brands during their reinvention periods through times of chaos. But here's the thing. I'm going to need you guys to be loud for some of this part. Can Polish people be loud? Yeah? Okay, we're going to try this one more time, but the people making the most noise, they could win this award-winning book. And I like to say it's half pictures, so you know it's good. Who wants to have fun today? Oh, I think right here, maybe. And what? Who wants fun? Okay, all right. Well, I think you won it. I think you won it. Okay, so we'll do that anytime there's a good point where I want you to get loud. He's Irish? Nice. So how many people use PowerPoint? Make some noise if you use PowerPoint sometimes. Yes? I sometimes say make some noise if you like PowerPoint, and then it all goes quiet. Well, what I want you to appreciate is I drew that Pac-Man for you. Yeah, it's awesome, it's animated, and it's a trademark violation. But I did it for a reason. What's more important, culture or strategy? You guys, you're waiting for them up front. You can't do that next time. What's more important, culture or strategy? Culture. And as good as it might be to have your great idea, you won't innovate, you won't adapt, you won't find new trends if you don't have a culture and team that can do a couple things a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about culture, and when we do, I'm going to show you a little quote here. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Ford actually put that in a sign outside their strategy boardroom to remind themselves that it doesn't matter how good your idea is, what matters is if you can execute. And in studying companies that win in times of chaos, the ones that adapt, I've learned there's 4 areas where companies that can thrive really tend to be different in chaos. The first is perspective. Perspective is the mission that you put yourself on. The next thing is intentional destruction. How much do we hang on to our old ideas? It's really tough to try something new when you're holding on to the past, and even Bill Gates has that issue. It's not an easy thing to get around. Failure, how much do you experiment? How willing are you to lose in order to try and find something new? And finally, customer obsession. So we're going to talk about each of these and their role in helping you find your new trends and ideas. For the first part, perspective, this is the mission you're on. The answer to the question we started with. Specifically, what is it that you're trying to do? But I wanted to do this in a fun way. I want to do this as a bit of a game or a contest. Do you guys like winning? Yeah. Okay, so here's your chance to win. I want you to feel that burning desire, that Polish need for victory right now. It's a game of Guess the Company. Any guesses? Microsoft. Yeah, it's always a guess in the beginning. Why not? Sometimes people say the laboratories of Schulten from the old Spice Guy. Okay, here's my first hint. Blank has been turning creative ideas into breakthroughs for well over a century. Any guesses? GE, Red Bull, Nokia, IBM. Another hint. They invented grammar checkers. Xerox. They invented electronic dictionaries in 1985. Franklin, good guess. In a big year for you, in 1989, they invented the laptop word processor. HP. Started making PDAs in 1994. Any other guesses? And by the way, it doesn't matter where I am or what country I ask. Nobody ever knows the answer to this, but the answer is Smith Corona, the best typewriter company in the world. And that's a title that they still hold today. Now, at first it seems like they're an unrelatable example. You know, they missed a pretty big trend. The computer. Someone's sitting at their typewriter like, no, that will never fly. Come on. But particularly for those of you in technology in the room, it's interesting to dive into their shoes because this was a spectacularly innovative company for more than 100 years. And I wanted to learn more about them, so I went and the first thing I did is I went to look for their website, which was funny because it exists. And check this out. On the 8th day, God created Smith Corona. How many people knew that? Wow. What would lead a company to put that on their website? Well, the first is you're defunct, you're bankrupt. Who cares? Let the 14-year-old nephew make the website. It's fine. But the second thing is they had a 100-year history of spotting opportunity and reinventing. The first typewriter with upper and lower case characters, first portable electric, goes all the way down to 1989 and the first laptop word processor. How did they not evolve from that? It's almost heartbreaking. You know, they were good at spotting trends. They spotted one of the biggest, and then they're gone. Well, here's where it's going to start feeling familiar to your own companies. Because Smith Corona, they weren't dinosaurs. They were smart people. It was a good company, and they were growing. In 1989, they actually had $500 million in revenue, and they were still getting bigger. And the problem with being good, like the farmer that we started with, is that you want to just farm. You don't want to try new things anymore. You become conservative. So in this case, their competitor, Remington Rand, who invented the typewriter, they did get into computers with that big nasty box there. But 1981 brought them too much risk. They went bankrupt. When you look at your competitors in a difficult time, and everybody in the world right now is seeing an uncertain, difficult time, what happens is that you don't want to copy them. You don't want the same fate. But that is way different than the laptop word processor Smith Corona made. But who cares? We don't want to do computing. The other thing is that when your competitors falter, when times are uncertain, you think more about stealing market share from a competitor rather than figuring out what you could do that is new. And then there's that. How many people know one of those? Yeah, that's the Commodore 128. It has a blue screen monitor and 2 external floppy drives. Boom! By comparison, this was the Smith Corona in the same time period. You had spell check, search and replace. In many ways, it was like a laptop 10 years ahead of its time, but with a printer built inside of it. Now, think about who your customers might be in this scenario. Really, it was governments, banks, multinational corporations. So what do they want? Do they want a computer box machine thing, or do they want a better version of what they already buy from you? So we keep making typewriters. But this is a lot of money. So when someone said, let's just try getting into computing, they did. And they got into a joint venture with Acer. Pretty soon, they had computers on the shelves of stores, and they were in this brand new market pursuing this trend that excited them. But then, 1 year into it, the CEO killed the deal. He got out of computing, and he said this quote, "Many people believe that the typewriter and word processor business is a buggy whip industry, which is far from true. There's still a strong market for our product in the United States and the world." And by the way, my most important takeaway is on this slide. If you use the word buggy whip, you're predestined for failure. But also look at this. This is it. There is a strong market for our products in the United States and the world. So why don't they get into computing? Because typewriters are already doing fine. This is what happens when we're already good at something. We don't want to try something new. 3 years after this statement, Smith Corona declares bankruptcy. Acer goes on to become the second largest computer company in the world. So how you frame your situation has a really big impact on whether or not you're going to find new trends and opportunities. This question is really important. You know, Smith Corona thought their answer was that they're the best typewriter company in the world. But that's thinking of the little attributes. If we think of the Harley Davidson way, we see the guy we started with, or the Old Spice guy, it's not about the product, it's the experience. And if Smith Corona thought of their experience, well, that was just helping people to record their thoughts. And if that's the mission that they put themselves on, they would have had to get into computing. So this is important. Specifically, what is it that you do? Everybody on your team should be able to articulate the same 7 words or less of what it is you're doing to make them feel on a mission. Now, we're going to get back to that. But before we do, the one thing I want to get at is failure. You know, failure, especially in more conservative countries, and Canada is more conservative than the United States by a lot, and I'm Canadian, and Poland's also conservative like Canadians. And so this is the thing that holds countries like us back. And I like to say if you don't fail, you will become the best typewriter company in the world. And here's what I mean. We get good, we get complacent, but to think of this sort of farmer analogy a little bit differently, complacency will be the architecture of your downfall. Now, I'll give you a little background to that quote because it's pretty intense. I just graduated from my undergrad in business, and I started working in America, and I went to go join a case team in consulting, and they'd been living for 1 year out of a hotel that was close to the client's site. And I was excited. I went to go meet my manager, and I go to meet him, like, hey, how are you doing? and I go to shake his hand, and he goes, "Yep." I'm like, "I'm Canadian. I don't know how to deal with that. Do I dance to make you happy? How do I turn that frown upside down?" And he's like, "Well, you know what? This hotel lost my laundry, so I'm going to wear this T-shirt all week long." And we're in the hotel, and it's like, okay. I don't know what to say. So I said, "Well, they gave me a fruit bowl in my room." "They gave you a fruit bowl?" At which point he marches across the lobby and he makes eye-to-eye contact with the hotel manager. And he goes, "I live here. Do you remember me? I'm the guy that lives in this hotel. I spent $20,000 living here. You say that I didn't even know what happened with my laundry. You say that I lost it, but I know I didn't bring an empty suitcase. So, that's my situation already." But he shows up and gets a fruit bowl. "Where's my fruit bowl?" At which point everyone in the hotel is now looking over the guy, and he goes, "Complacency will be the architecture of your downfall." And then the guy's just looking at him like, "I don't even know what that means, but that sounds awesome." And today, the way I like to think it, I told you the farmer idea, but I like to think of it like this. When you find something you're good at, it's like finding a field or a hill of opportunity. And every one of us in this room, professionally, is on one of these hills. And so are your companies. And at any given time, that means we can tweak our skills. We can tweak our strategy just a little bit, and we'll keep getting better. But Smith Corona had made thousands of different typewriters. They could always tweak their formula and make a typewriter that was just a little bit better. The problem then with being good is that it blinds you from seeing the new hills of opportunity. When Smith Corona tried computing seemed like a failure by comparison to typewriters. But of course, that stops you then. Being so good at typewriters stopped them from seeing the new field of opportunity, the new hill, which was computing. So how do you push yourself? How do you stay good at what you're good at, but push yourself to find those new hills? Well, I'll show you how the BBC did it. At the BBC, innovation means coming up with new TV show ideas. But in the 90s, people stopped tuning in. They were losing market share. They needed to spark creativity. How many people, make some noise if you like being creative? Anyone? Yeah. So they took all those people cheering and they put nice controls around them. Yeah, imagine someone saying yes and no to everything you do. But basically, they looked at the formula for their success, and they realized that most of their shows follow a formula. So every show now had to follow the same formula. But what happened is that innovation narrowed and market share went down. And when this goes on, the only real upside is you get a new CEO and CFO. Sorry about that. No offense to the front row, right? The new CEO and CFO, they needed to spark creativity, but how do you do it without making too much change, without sending too much ripples? It's tough to make big change happen. So they put in a gambling fund. Ideas that failed the screening process could still qualify for gambling money. Now, does anyone want to guess a failure of a TV show that got a little gambling money? Any guesses? X Factor? That's a good guess. The answer is The Office. So The Office failed its screening process because it wasn't exactly the same as all the other shows the BBC did, but it won gambling money and it went on to become their biggest export, replicated in many other countries. You can create a gambling fund maybe on your team with money, but also with time. What proportion of your week are you thinking about ideas that might not work? Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's a new project that's been on the back burner. But how do you push yourself to have some time on some of these higher risk gambles? To get there, one of the shortcuts that we'll get at is going to be customer obsession. Now, I wanted to think about an interesting way to talk about customers, but there's lots of different companies in the room with many different types of customers. So I thought, let's make it a little bit fun. Let's do a case study where we're talking more about how to convince somebody of a message, of an idea. Because your customer might be the end consumer, it might be a B2B store, it might be someone within your own company. So what I wanted to do is to see if we could get people to stop littering, doing a little live case study. Think we could do it? I need you to be loud. Could we do a live case study? Yeah? Okay. So has anyone ever seen this image? Make some noise if you've ever seen this image. So this is an interesting ad. And it's actually 42 years old, but it was called Keep America Beautiful. And this ad, as old as it is, once you see it, you'll never forget it. They would show somebody litter, and you'd see the North American Indian with his tear. And actually, as a fun side note, he's actually an Italian actor named Esperanto Ducote. So God bless America, right? And he makes an emotional connection with his tear. So people study him. In America, they always have him in marketing textbooks, and they think of this as one of the most successful campaigns ever. But the thing is, Iron Eyes Cody had no measurable impact on whether or not people litter. People remembered him, but there's no impact. So does an emotional connection matter with your products if it works just a little bit on everyone? And realistically, it probably doesn't. It's nice to make an emotional connection, but it's just not enough. So with anything you're communicating, whether you're selling your idea internally to your teammates or selling a product to your end customer, there's 4 ways that you can speak. The most basic level is we can be functional. We can talk about the bullet points of what's important, which is how you saw the first Old Spice commercial in the beginning. And in innovation, we often get like this. You know, we make the typewriter, it has this and this and this. The next level up, though, is to think about innovation, ideas, communication in more of a beneficial way. How are you making your consumer's life better? Sell them on that. Focus on that. One step further is an emotional connection, which is deep and memorable, but doesn't really convince people. So that's where we get to the Holy Grail, which is what we're going to talk about. The Holy Grail is to make a cultural connection. With a cultural connection, this is why you see people tattoo Harley Davidson or Apple onto their arms. But the idea is that you're not speaking to me as the customer, you speak with me. You perceive me as being on the same team, and that's how I think of you. I want you to win because you're on my team. I'm going to show you what I mean by diving a little deeper, but to make a cultural connection, the thing is you can't make something for everybody. You need to find a group of people who believe what you're making is irresistible. So if we were trying to get people to stop littering, we need to find the most influential litterers. I mean, probably a lot of people throw garbage out of their car. It's probably a lot. But we need to find the most influential group of who litters. So back in America, in Texas, we've all seen enough movies based in Texas to know what it's like, even if you've not been there. They decided to study this, and they paid a couple $100,000 to figure out who litters out of their vehicles in Texas. I was thinking that even though we're not from America, we could probably figure that out. Do you think we could do it? Yeah, okay. So I need you to be loud. Who litters out of their cars, males or females? All right, like nobody else females at the end. It's damn males. Okay. Young males or old males? Young. All right. Now really loud for me. Do they drive cars or do they drive trucks? Minivans or pickup trucks? Okay, so no research at all, but you're convinced. It turns out that when they did look at this, surprisingly, what they learned was, you're absolutely right. The people who litter in Texas are males, they're young, and they drive pickup trucks. Now, being Canadian, I also have to tell you, they drink a little beer, and this was Texas, so we'll give them a shotgun rack. But most importantly, they have a king of my world lifestyle. So put yourself inside that pickup truck, juxtapose yourself next to the crying Italian actor, and ask yourself if he stops you from wanting to throw a beer can out of your pickup truck. Inevitably, he does not. So I'm going to show you the campaign that they came up with. And when I do, you might have heard this slogan before, but very few people, even if they're in a state right next to Texas, few people know that this is a trademarked ad slogan. The slogan was, "Don't mess with Texas." Trademark, that's the best part. The first commercial had two Dallas Cowboy NFL stars in there, standing on the side of the highway, watching cars go by, and as soon as one of them sees a can hit the ground, a trash, he picks it up, turns to the camera, smashes it against his head, and says, "If you litter in Texas, you're messing with me. Don't mess with Texas." Okay, won't litter. You can see how much more aggressive his message was. Before I show you the results of the campaign, I'm going to show you how they keep their message connected to its cause today. Here's a recent commercial.
Hey, this is Owen Wilson.
This is Erica Badu.
I'm Janine Turner.
This is Julius Jones.
This is Lance Armstrong.
This is Leanne Womack.
We're Lost Lonely Boys.
This is Chuck Norris.
This is Jennifer Love Hewitt reminding you.
Don't mess with Texas.
Now, personally, I would have ended on Chuck Norris. But they're like, no, Matthew McConaughey. Everybody's afraid of him. And it's too soon for the Lance Armstrong jokes, eh? When you make a cultural connection with your customer, they perceive you as being on the same team. And that's very important, especially today with social media. Because if I think that your brand is on my team, I will like it on Facebook, I will tweet it, I'll do a whole bunch of stuff. I'll generate word of mouth, I'll recommend you. So that perception of a team in this case has even caused people to make their own commercials, which they upload to YouTube. Here's an example of a user-generated commercial.
You know why I pulled you over?
Hey, hold on one sec. Hey man, I gotta let you go. I got pulled over. Yeah, I'll give you a call back. Okay, great.
Please, don't mess with Texas.
Nice. Now put yourself in that pickup truck and compare the two campaigns. But here's where I want to challenge you to think about how you communicate to your customers. Because the thing is, it's really easy to think that we have a way to present our ideas or products that work well on everybody. But it's not about making something work well on everyone. Ironized Cody works well on everyone, but he had no impact. Don't mess with Texas? Well, it actually offends a lot of people. It only really is targeted at young males. But because those young males see this as their message, it's for them, it's their team, it created a cultural connection, and litter on the side of the road was reduced by 72%, slightly beating the target, which was 5%. And of course, that slogan is now synonymous with Texas. So in all industries then, to get really deep, to adapt, to find your trends, it begins by trying to better understand what your consumers are all about. This matters for the CEO right down to the newest hire. And it used to mean focus groups, surveys, interviews. Those are all important. But the problem is that in a time period of chaos, it doesn't really teach you enough about how the consumer's head is shifted. Surveys, interviews, focus groups, they cause us to look at what our competitors are doing, to make little optimizations. To really understand a changing world, you need to find ways to meet and talk to your customers in the zone. I'm going to show you what I mean by showing you how some people, even senior people, push themselves to really understand their customer. I was interviewing the head of design for General Motors, and I was most interested in the Cadillac Escalade, which is one of the greatest selling vehicles of all time. And what I wanted to know was how he made it so popular. It's in every rap video. It's part of hip-hop culture. Did he product place it? Did he get rap stars to drive it? What did he do? And so he could have done a number of things. He could have done a survey or an interview. He could have gone to his own dealership and talked to people looking at Escalades. But if you go to your own dealership, you're only going to talk to the people that are already thinking of being customers. He has 1,000 people on his team. He could have gotten someone to make him a video. But instead, this very senior guy decided to go to the most dangerous neighborhood, perhaps in America, in Detroit, and look for the people driving the Escalades in that dangerous neighborhood. Does anyone want to guess who's driving the Escalades in the most dangerous neighborhoods? Any guesses? The drug dealers, yeah. I did a conference once for some lawyers, and someone said, the lawyers! but it's probably the drug dealers. So as soon as he sees this Escalade, he's looking for Escalades. As soon as he sees one, he runs across the street, probably like the other people looking for the Escalade. He's going like this. The Escalade slows down, presumably to take his drug order. And he goes, "Excuse me, young man, but I designed this vehicle, and I was wondering if I could accompany you on a ride alongside your business for the day." Wow. Now, for that young man, this vehicle is a part of his culture, so it was cool to meet the designer. But for the designer, this senior executive, there's just so many things separating him from a customer in a chaotic, changing world. So by just meeting the person, that taught him how much different their lifestyle was, what they liked, how their needs were changing. There's a lot of other people that have done this. At Fast Company magazine, the editors will actually call people who cancel their subscriptions. At Starbucks, the SVP takes her team throughout Paris and Italy, where they'll go to 20 cafes a day, just trying to understand European coffee culture. And in my example, I was running a business line for a bank, and I'd headed innovation and I'd headed analytics, and then the world got all chaotic. And so suddenly the only products that we could offer, they were not viable anymore. So they promoted me to head that business line, and then gave him, wow, I can run a business line with no products, thank you. And then they gave me the goal to only shrink the business by 20%. Yeah. I thought all I want to do is be an entrepreneur. So imagine after a great year, my friends can go, "Hey, how's that business you're running going?" And I go, "Great. I only shrunk it by 20%. I'm that good. Hire me for your company and I'll shrink it 20% too." But here was the unique thing. This sense of crisis allowed us to do two things very differently. One, when the world's chaotic, as the Eurozone is, you can cut through red tape a little faster and get your company to take a few different risks. You can let them know now is the time to change. We can use the external economy and stories like Smith Corona to convince people to try new things. The second thing was that we knew we needed to understand our customer a little bit better. So I set up booths in malls, just little displays, and I put them all across the country. And the people that would go to work at them included myself, my head of marketing, my head of advertising, my head of finance. All of these people, including me, were wearing the T-shirts and then just talking to people. And we would ask them, "What are you looking for? What do you really need? What does banking mean to you?" And what we learned was, in a technical world, so in anyone that's in technology especially, or anyone that's in finance, anyone that's in telecom, you know your world so well, you know the details so much that you lose sight of how the customer thinks about things. Kind of like that first Old Spice commercial. You think in details, so it means that you forget. Maybe the customer that you're talking to, if you're in B2B, selling to another company, maybe it's their head of technology, but the CEO also signs the check. Or that end consumer there can be different. So in this case, what we did is we changed how we talked to our customer. That was pretty much it. And it allowed us, instead of shrinking 20%, we tripled monthly bookings, and that new business line went on to become a $1 billion business line. For me, the takeaway was that none of this can happen if you don't create that sense of urgency, one, and two, talk to your customers, because that's where the biggest trends you're going to find are actually coming from. This leads me then to my next section, which is about trend hunting. Now, at the very end of my presentation, I'm going to show you a video on 20 of the hot trends that we're seeing in retail and digital and mobile, and that's cool. But what I really want to say for you, in your companies, in your roles, is that there's no point innovating if you think you already know the answer. I started today by telling you that all of you are going to keep getting better no matter what. I would bet on that. But this isn't about getting just a little bit better. This isn't about farming or optimizing. Trend spotting is about trying to push yourself to a new level, to find new fields of opportunity. As an example, I was interviewing a designer for Ferrari, and I asked him, "How do you spot trends for Ferrari?" And I thought he would tell me, "Oh, Jeremy, I look at everything that is going on in race cars and in airplanes and in motorbikes and in boats." That's what I thought he would say. But he said, Jeremy, to keep Ferrari on the edge, I spend half of my time designing female fashion, handbags, and to really push his creativity, he's made an entire line of temples for dogs. Look how happy that little guy looks in his glass box. He said, you need to be more open to the complete possibility of what could be. And even though he's designing for the most macho segment of the auto industry, Ferrari drivers, he knew he couldn't have Ferrari on the edge if he himself wasn't on the edge of fashion. So in all industries then, what happens is we look so closely at our competitors that we mirror them. But what you need to do to really break through is reset your expectations and then look for ideas in different markets and try and think about how you can bring them back. So the video I'm going to show you at the end of today with 20 different trends, I want you to try and think about how each one could maybe impact your business in a different way. And the idea is as you start to push yourself then, you start to find these bigger opportunities you can capitalize on. But before I show you the video on trends, I want to talk a little bit about communication. On one hand, we're in this chaotic world, which means for you, trend spotting is something difficult. But on the other end, how do you get your message through? Because it's also a world cluttered with media. How do you break through and make your message stick? Well, at Trend Hunter, we study communication, and we think of every article we publish as a test. And so far, we've published 200,000 experiments, and we try and see what works, what doesn't. And basically, there are 3 ways that you can make your idea stick. The first is you could have a viral creation. You might have the luxury of a product or service that you've made, and it's so good that people will talk about it. But we don't always have that luxury. So the next concept is on having a viral medium. The way you deliver your product or idea, the way you package and tell me about it, could be so different that I want to tell somebody. Or finally, you could have a well-packaged story which wraps around everything. So let's talk about each of these. Make some noise if you sometimes work from home. Everyone cheering. Those are the ones that like working home because you don't have to put clothes on. You know what I mean? Right? But the problem now is, and half the people in this room in technology companies, in telecom, you're making it more difficult because all laptops now have a webcam on them. Every meeting's now a Skype meeting. Even all my wonderful meetings with Netia and the interviews, it's all Skype. Suddenly, you got to put clothes on. You might even need to put a suit on. But you don't need just any suit. You need a half suit. All business up top and all party down below. And when it's nostalgic for us because at Trend Hunter, we published the half suit 6 years ago. And when we did, it was our first case study of being in the center of the sort of viral blogosphere. And 175 sites linked to us, 1,800 linked to them. And 6 months later, that little half suit had 35 million views. And they sent me one. So if you ever see me with a tie, you've been warned. But now, it's all much faster. That was 6 years ago. In that time frame, Twitter was invented. Facebook became relevant. We became 50 times bigger. All the other sites became bigger. You could now get 35 million impressions to something in one day. But my takeaway for you is not that you are making a half suit. I'm not suggesting you need to do that. But there is a different reality that when you create something that connects, whatever your product or service is, when you connect, when I see you as being on my team, when I love what it is you do, well, your story will travel faster than ever before. And in my opinion, there's very few companies in the world that have internalized the size of this opportunity. It's incredible. And so how do you structure your ideas and your products and your pitches to really travel? Well, part of this leads me to the way you convey your message, to the way you communicate it. And I want to show you an interesting little case study. This guy here is Josh Bell. Now, Josh Bell plays a $3.5 million Stradivarius violin. He plays all of the music in the movie The Red Violin. And when he's on stage, he makes a cool $1,000 a minute. So he is the best in the world at what it is that he does. So the Wall Street Journal, they found a week when he was coming to town and he had multiple sold-out concerts. And so they hired him to do a third concert for them. And they wanted him to play the most technically complicated music that he'd ever done. They asked if he would do that, maybe something he's never attempted on stage. And he said he'd do it. And they said, okay, well, can we do a concert where people can come right up to you? So they could walk right up to you if you want. Yep. And so the question I have for you is how many people would want to hear Josh Bell play his most technically complicated music and be able to go right up to him? Would anyone want to hear that? Yeah? Okay, here's what happened. Josh Bell is the best in the world. He makes $1,000 a minute. But when he's not packaged and delivered as if he's the best in the world, of the 1,100 people that went by, only 7 of them stopped, and he made a total of just $35, most of which came from one woman who recognized him and said, "Hey, will you be here again next week?" Portray your product as average, and that's all that it will ever be. Instead, you need to convey what you're doing as being irresistible to that specific group of people, those people that now consider you as part of their team. And this brings me to the final section, which is about having a well-packaged story. Effectively, the answer to the question we started with, specifically, what is it that you're trying to do? Now, your answer to this needs to be 7 words or less because that's all people remember. And you should have 7 words or less when you need to describe a new product or a new feature, especially if you're selling something technical or something sophisticated. Because that's the message that people then carry on. At Trend Hunter, our editors actually compete on the titles of the articles, and we've learned that the title of the article has more impact than whatever the article is about itself. So our rule number 1 is to relentlessly obsess about your story. And we've learned that the same article, written 2 different ways, could get 1,000 views or it could get 3 million views. So I'm going to show you the framework that we've developed over time. And actually, I'm going to give everyone a free digital copy of my book after, so you can dive more into this if you'd like. Well, and because I'm giving it to you all free, it makes you wonder about the people that were cheering in the beginning, right? Like, it was free. But here's the secret sauce as we've learned it. There's 3 things that can make your message stick. The first is you need your 7 words or less to be simple. Simple messages supercharge word of mouth. The reason why is that you tell me about your complicated new product or idea, then I go talk to my CEO, and I've got to rehash what you said and tell them. But if you give me the 7 words or less that are so easy, well, that's what I'll tell the next person. The next thing is you need to be direct. Direct is a different word than descriptive. Descriptive would mean if I ask you what you do and you've told me, well, I'm VP of sales and technology at a given company. That's descriptive. Direct would be conveying why I should choose you, why you're different. And this brings me to the final point, which is you need your ideas and messages to be supercharged, which means picking words that are exciting for people to say. So let me show you 3 examples. 2 of them are fun products, and one of them is Trend Hunter itself. You know, I like to push my example here because I actually think it's really difficult to do. And I spent 6 years going back and forth, never knowing how to even describe my own company, even though I say it's so important to do, because it is really tough. And we used to say, oh, it's the world's largest trend website. And that's okay, except you don't need a trend website. Why do you need that? So although I'm saying world's largest, and that sounds spectacular, it's not the best way to say something because it doesn't convey why you would ever choose it. So now our new message, our new slogan, which is only a few months old, which we love, is simple. It's find better ideas faster. Now you know what I do. Now you know how I might help you. And let's do now 2 different examples which are more about products. This little burger is called the Fleur Burger. It comes from the Fleur de Lis restaurant in the Mandalay Bay Casino in Las Vegas. They love it. They love the name because Fleur Burger, it sounds like French cuisine and it sounds like luxury. But if I asked you, would anyone here tell anybody about it? No, maybe not. But what if we called this what it is? This is the world's most expensive hamburger. Well, now you want to know how much it is. You'll be like, Jeremy, how much is that burger? And if I don't tell you before I leave Poland, you will corner me at the airport and say, Jeremy, don't you leave here without telling me how much that burger is. I don't know if you would, but I would sure like it if someone did one day. So what if we just said what this is exactly? This is a $5,000 hamburger. This hamburger costs $5,000. Wow. You know, next time someone's complaining about an expensive entree, you're going to remember, how much was this burger? That message just stuck. So as a final example, I want to keep us in this unhealthy world of hamburgers with this lovely beast. This could come from the Fat Burger Cafe, which is a real restaurant chain. But actually, it comes from the Heart Attack Grill. At the Heart Attack Grill, that's called a quadruple bypass burger. It comes served to you by someone wearing a nurse's outfit, and it comes in a combo pack that includes a beer and a pack of cigarettes. And if you finish it, they will put you in a wheelchair, and they will roll you back to your car. Rule number 1 is to relentlessly obsess about your story. Now, I still have my video for you on the trends in 2013. Again, I want to challenge you to think about even the ones that are the most unrelated and how they can inspire things that happen with yourself or your clients or your customers. But before I start it, I want to give you all a link. trendhunter.com/secret/Warsaw, which has $500 of free stuff for everybody, including my digital download of the book, a whole bunch of reports, videos, all that stuff for free. So check that out. And that's the example of the book. Like I said, it's half pictures, so you know it's good. But what I want to leave you with more than anything before starting the video is my thesis that, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to Poland. I've had a lot of interviews and conversations leading up to here, so I'm really excited for everything that you're doing. I think you have the potential to do a lot of creative things, and when I see any comments about Poland being conservative, I think of how Canada's conservative, so I hope some of my ideas can help us beat America. And what I want to leave you with is my thesis that by leveraging viral trends and methodical innovation, you can generate ideas, harness creativity, exploit chaos, and ultimately ensure that Poland wins. Thank you very much. All right, here are the trends in 2013. Immersive branding, dystopic fascination, and manufactured addiction. Today we hunt the trends in 2013. Welcome to TrendHunter.tv. You hunt the trends, we put them on TV. And now the top 20. At 20, vending 3.0. From facial recognition to live tweeting, vending machines are getting more interactive and creative. There's even a vending machine that lets you swap goods with other people. At 19, upgraded ordinary. When's the last time you applied ketchup with a caulking gun or poured spices from an alchemist vial? Innovators are grabbing attention by dramatically upgrading ordinary. At 18, dystopic fascination. Pop culture has taken a twist and a turn with dystopia edging its way into books, movies, and art. Blame the Hunger Games, Twilight, or even Red Dawn if you like, but it seems our fascination with the wonderful world of utopia is being out-edged by futuristic dystopia. At 17, millennial madness. Will 2013 be the year that marketers and employers figure out the millennial masters of their own domain? Well, millennial Gen Ys are becoming a key business issue, important to understand for all those boomers who say they're approaching retirement. At 16, modular retail. Fold-away fashion stores, paper buildings, and temporary cafes. 2 years ago, we covered pop-up shops as a novel idea to expand your brand, but now it seems that semi-permanence is ironically here to stay. At 15, imposed interaction. In an age where open offices are becoming the norm, some cafes are taking openness to the next level for entrepreneurs. These interactive hotspots force entrepreneurs together, creating imposed interactions for all those who crave the mental stimulation of working in a collaborative space. At 14, shoptimization. Interactive retail is becoming more omnipresent, with apps that reward you with deals the second you step into your favorite store. Walk into your favorite fashion location and you might even see yourself getting a deal for crossing the street to check out a competitor. The future of retail strategy has become mobile. At 13, sustainarchitecture. Reducing your carbon footprint is one thing, but the new level of sustainable buildings can even produce their own food, electricity, and clean drinking water. At 12, deliberate vintage. Deliberate vintage is all about recreating the antiqued imagery of days past. Faded colors, vignetting, and grainy images are making a comeback, and Instagram's $1 billion acquisition is just one example of our fascination with the early days of technology. At 11, immersive branding. Interactive mega projections, branded bus rides, and chocolate organ concerts. Over the last couple years, brands started engaging consumers online, but now the realization is that social media love will only follow if you're also able to delight those consumers in real life. The outcome is a new era in immersive branding. At 10, wearable multitasking. Why wear a watch that can only tell time when you can socially connect, play games, or even pay for stuff? Yeah, in an age where we're obsessed with multitasking, you can actually buy a credit card gaming internet watch. Finally. At 9, subscription world. Guess what? You can now subscribe to clothing, furniture, underwear, and even food. Targeted subscription has moved beyond the magazine with a wide range of products from mega endorsers like Mary-Kate and Ashley and Justin Timberlake. At 8, physical virtual. QR codes, virtual change rooms, and augmented reality. A world of digital delights are being incorporated into retail spaces, bridging the gap between tangible shopping and e-commerce. At 7, benefit brands. Being a benefit corporation, or B Corp, is the new badge of honor that proves your brand is socially and environmentally conscious. Trend Hunter's sister site, socialbusiness.org, has now discovered more than 1,000 unique business models that are for-profit ways to save the world. At 6, nostalgic escape. Kids dream of tree forts, castles, and magical things. To recreate this feeling for adults, companies are cleverly creating surreal experiences, products, and marketing that play upon our childhood nostalgia. Is it an escape from uncertain economic times, or just the fast track to delight? At 5, crossover cuisine. From specialized sushi and bento boxes to rice roll machines and insect sushi, Western culture is adopting a curiosity for the East. Perhaps it's an acceptance of the rise of China, but the concept of crossover cuisine is expanding our minds into fashion, architecture, and design, all influenced by the East. At 4, fashionizing. Whether it's a bottle of Coke or a feminine hygiene product, unglamorous everyday objects are getting a little more style. Items once considered mundane are getting revamped to appeal to that younger, trend-setting audience. At 3, shoppertainment. The retail experience is now about so much more than just shopping. It's the brand experience, memorable entertainment, and a way to truly live the product's brand. That's why brands such as Audi and IKEA have been focusing their energy to engage consumers on an epic new level. At number 2, industry retail. Concrete, raw wood, and industrial accents are becoming far more popular for home and especially retail use. The trend takes the minimalist aesthetic to a whole new level with a less is more approach. At number 1, manufactured addiction. The shopping experience is becoming gamified. Retail apps for your phone, daily deal sites, and point reward systems are being ingrained in our culture, incenting consumers to buy and buy quickly in order to get that next big deal or points that unlock something even greater.
There's never been a more exciting way to create a cultural connection with your consumer. Those are the trends in 2013. If you'd like to find better ideas faster, visit trendhunter.com and check out our customizable trend report platforms for your brand.
Well, I had a lot of fun, and I thank you for inviting me. I've still got a couple more books, though, if people were making the right amount of noise. Thank you, Poland.
Thank you, Jeremy.